Greetings, and welcome to the course setup video for CSD 1600 JavaScript and jQuery. The point of this video is to guide you through all the software programs and websites you are going to need to be able to do this course on your home computer. To start things off, your IDE. We will be using Visual Studio Code for writing all of the web files and JavaScript and such for this project. Now, despite the loud and proud claims here on the front page, we will not be using generative AI to write any of the code. We'll talk about that in actual class videos. But you do need Visual Studio Code. It is the IDE that we are using and use in other courses. If you do not have Windows, there is an Other Platforms link right here that you'll be able to go to download the program. Default installation options are acceptable. Unless you want to customize the installation, that is fine as well. Now, to turn in assignments and to display your final project, you are going to need a GitHub account. So make sure that you sign in to github.com and create an account. I do not recommend associating your Clark State account with your GitHub account, because remember, once you are no longer a student, you lose access to your Clark State email. So, I would recommend using a personal email address, but make sure that your username is acceptable for a classroom setting, because other people will be able to see your user ID. But if you want to use your Clark State email, that is completely acceptable as well. Now, unless you want to live the command line life, you are going to also want to download GitHub Desktop. This is purely a visual interface for interacting with remote repositories. And it's just a useful piece of program to have. I am going to assume that everybody is using this, and we'll have videos that cover how to use this. I said you can use command line or other programs if you so desire, but if you need any help with assignment turn-in, I will expect to see GitHub Desktop present. Being a class that involves web development, we're going to have to do some image manipulation. Not necessarily image creation. This is not a graphics design class. But we are going to have to work with images, which means you are going to need a program to be able to do some basic imaging work, such as cropping, resizing, etc. You can use any imaging program that you want. The one that is recommended for this course is GIMP, because it is a free open source program and is very powerful and pretty much has all the features that other image manipulation software programs have. It is a very good software program. But again, it is not mandatory, but if you need course assistance, you're going to need to use GIMP, because that's the only one your instructor understands, at least if your instructor is Professor Fleming. Now, before we move on to the online textbook, I'm going to talk a moment to talk about ad blockers. Install one, or at least I strongly recommend that you install one. The FBI literally put out a bulletin about 3-4 years ago stating that they recommend people have an ad blocker to protect themselves when browsing the internet. Ads can be an attack vector for malicious actors on the internet. So it is literally recommended by the FBI to have an ad blocker when browsing the internet. Ghostery is the one that is recommended. It has been around for a very long time and has a very good reputation and is very, very effective at what it does, and also makes it easy for you to whitelist websites that you do want to see ads on to support. Now, the website that we use for our online textbook is W3 Schools, which, side note, does have a lot of ads on it if you don't have an ad blocker running. we'll be using quite a few different sections off of the W3 Schools website. We will be using the HTML tutorial, the JavaScript, the CSS, and jQuery tutorials. We'll be pulling information from all of these sections on W3 Schools. You do not need to pay for W3 Schools. Having a free account is all you need to have, so just sign up with an email. You can, in fact, sign up using your GitHub account, although that is not required if you want to reduce the number of accounts that you have. But you do not need to pay for W3 Schools. It is also important to remember that for tracking to see if you've read your assignments or not, it's very important to make sure that you are signed in, because if you are not signed in, like I haven't been, it does not track whether or not you've read an assignment. Just to go over to Python real quick so you can see it, when you've read an assignment and you're signed in, it will track it by putting a green mark next to the section in question. When you go to submit reading assignments, this is what you need to take a screenshot of. Again, more detailed information is in Blackboard. Finally, in terms of websites, regardless of your personal opinion on generative AI, for the moment at least, it is here to stay. When you get out into the commercial workspace, you are going to be encountering generative AI. You're probably going to be asked to use it. So it's important to understand what it is, what you can do with it, the ethical concerns involving it, and the legal concerns involving it. So there will be a section of the class talking about using generative AI, specifically using generative images as a way of very quickly doing mock-ups for web pages. Few quick little notes on Visual Studio Code. Once Visual Studio Code is installed, you are going to want to open it up. You are going to want to go to Extensions, and you most likely will not have a warning symbol here telling you that you have depreciated extensions. You're going to want to go to the Extensions section and type in live server, because we want the live server from Ritwick Day installed. Very specifically, we want the run from Ritwick Day that has 73-ish million installs. Not because it is objectively better, but simply to ensure that we are all using the same extension, to ensure that there are no errors caused by minor little version differences. So again, for Visual Studio Code, you are going to need the live server extension from Ritwick Day installed. And basically what this enables, and this file will be part of the first assignment that we take a look at in the second week of class, is it enables you to right-click on an HTML file, tell it to open with live server, and it will automatically rev up a web server and open up that HTML page, so that way you can test your code and your HTML to make sure that it is doing what it is supposed to be doing. To recap real quick, the IDE is Visual Studio Code. You can install it with default options. That'll be perfectly fine. You will need a GitHub account. Make sure that your GitHub username is acceptable for an educational environment, which is a good idea also professionally, because GitHub accounts can be something that you put on your resume in terms of, here is the code that I have written, if you're pursuing this for a career. You will need GitHub Desktop installed, or some means of checking out and committing code from a repository. You will need an image editor. GIMP is recommended. It is strongly recommended that you have some form of ad blocker installed. Again, Ghostery is recommended for Firefox at least. W3 Schools is our online textbook, specifically the HTML, JavaScript, CSS, and, not Python, jQuery sections. And we will be taking a look at generative AI, specifically images, and we'll be using Firefly Adobe for this. Again, not because it is objectively better or anything like that. It just happens to have a lot of options and is relatively easy to use. If you have any problems or run into any problems when trying to get your software set up, please contact your instructor immediately, because there is a lot to cover this semester and we need to get straight into things on the second week. So take this first week of class, do the syllabus quiz, read over the syllabus, do the quiz, get things set up, and hopefully we can cover a lot of ground and learn a lot of fun stuff.